Welcome back. You're with Face the Nation. We start off the third round with Rohan Fernando, former president of the Tea Exporters Association of Sri Lanka. Rohan, I just want to drag your attention to a statement that you earlier made. You initially said that the licenses of all these companies, the 53 companies, have to be cancelled. Several seconds later you say that, I want to rephrase that, and I want to say you said that there has to be a due process and then action needs to be taken.
Yeah.
My question to you is, Rohan, why mustn't the licenses of these organizations, which have been functioning for the last 3 months now, since the invasion took place, why must Sri Lanka allow them to function?
My point is, in the first place, if they were not cancelled, that means they were going through certain procedure. And now we have heard that they are challenging the process that was deployed in detection. So if there is a confusion as to whether they have used the sugar or not, and if in the first instance of detecting, if the license were not cancelled, and now we have spent time from February, and none of these factories' names even have been disclosed. So there appears to be some form of confusion and ambiguity about the detection. That is why I said, in fairness, go through the due process, declare these factories, and they take the...
Why aren't the names of these factories being declared?
These are the questions that we would like to ask. Why?
So
now we as exporters would like this matter to be resolved as soon as possible. Longer you wait, what happens is this information goes in.
Rohan, are you saying that these 53 factories are currently manufacturing or producing tea at present, as we speak?
We don't know. They are not cancelled. They are still in operation. So that is where the danger is. Longer you drag this on, the problem gets compounded, and then we have a bigger problem with our exporters. Now already we are getting questionnaires from our exporters, our importers in Germany, asking what is happening in these 53 factories. Have they taken action? Are they clean or are they guilty? Have they taken action? And we are at a loss to find out what has happened. So that is why I said,
when you say that the due process must take place against these companies, we saw the bond scam in Sri Lanka in 2015. 2018, nothing has been done. So when the due process takes place in Sri Lanka, does that mean that this government probably will be out of power as well, and there will be a new tea board chairman, a new plantation minister? I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to say.
My point is, when there is a detection, when there is enough evidence, either the tea board has the power to cancel, or you go before the court of law and file action, take an injunction, or do the necessary procedure to stop them from operation. Nothing has happened. So that is why, as an exporter, we are wondering whether they have been caught by mistake or whether there is actually they have been involved in adulteration.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Vijaywada says he is very confident they have adulterated the tea. So therefore, for God's sake, take action.
Thank you very much, Rohan Fernando, former president of the Tea Exporters Association of Sri Lanka. I have no option but to start off with you, Dr. Rohan Vijaywada, former chairman of the Sri Lanka Tea Board. Rohan sounds an alarm, and it does make sense when he says, why not reveal the names of these 53 companies? At least then, if they are manufacturing tea, tea exporters can be careful and cautious when purchasing the tea. And why not?
The reason is what I consider natural justice. I think we have to be very cautious and have a presumption of innocence. I have the 53 names here. I have no intention of disclosing those names. It's wrong to do that, because until an inquiry finds them guilty and decides what action should be taken, we should not disclose the names. I think it can harm the reputation of a factory that might just be innocent, just like the example of another RPC factory that had some sugar planted in it. However, let me explain what this procedure was. The day the raids took place, we took samples from the various rollers, it's called duals, We took samples of multiple douls from each of these factories. Those samples were taken in triplicate. And a voucher sample of each doul was sealed, signed and handed over to the factory. Those samples are still with the factory. They can be tested even today. Another 2 samples were taken to the tea board. One of them was given for analysis. The other is even today in a deep freezer in the tea board, sealed and kept there. So there is no lack of evidence. The evidence is all there. It's just the will to test it. Now the question that some of these factory owners, and one particular individual you mentioned, Dr. Ziad Mohammed, has been going around the country saying that it's all right to add sugar. In fact, the scientist from Peradeniya University who assisted the tea board has been attacked by this individual, Dr. Mohammed, in Peradeniya University, saying that he is destroying the tea industry as a result of helping the tea board to catch the culprits. So these samples are still there, and even today they can be tested. And you can find out is the amount of sugar elevated or not. It's very simple. But no factory owner is trying to test that. Some of the innocent factory owners have gone and had their teas tested independently and found that they are in fact innocent. The guilty people are dodging the issue and trying to fight it politically rather than allowing their teas to be retested and an open decision made as to whether they are guilty or innocent.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rohan Patel, the former chairman of the Sri Lanka Tea Board. I need to remind our 4 panelists this evening that if they do mention any names, they have to take full responsibility for the comments that they are making. Just a quick reminder for our panelists this evening about that as well. So let's move to Jayanta Karunaratne, the chairman of the Tea Exporters Association of Sri Lanka, who is responsible for all the tea exporters in Sri Lanka. And your comments and your views, Jayanta, is going to be taken to heart by all tea exporters who are watching this show at present. So you have a problem now. You have 53 companies. The tea board is not willing to divulge their names until otherwise they are found guilty. But that again is a far-fetched goal for a country like Sri Lanka, because we've seen when corruption takes place, it takes at least many years until the guilty is proven. So there is no expectation that the names of these 53 companies will ever be brought to light. So the question is very simple. What are the concerns that you have as an exporter, as well as the chairman of the Exporters Association of Sri Lanka?
So it's a very serious issue to us. You know, our members, always check with us whether we know the names of these 53 factories. We cannot officially divulge these names because we don't know. Now we run the risk of using these teas and exporting, and one day we will get caught. It is not our company or maybe the particular company who ship. It is Ceylon. Finally, it is Ceylon tea will get will get blacklisted. So it's a huge risk for the country for allowing this to happen. I don't know whether those 53 factories have now stopped using sugar. So if in that case it is good, then it is okay by us. But if it's continuing, but what we hear is other people also have started using it. So if it's happening, it is not to a particular company or particular sector, but it is for the country, for the Ceylon tea. So this need to be stopped. So we run that risk. We always have been asking to whatever action we take, this need to be stopped. Adulteration need to be stopped. So this is our view.
Jayanta, you're also an exporter. You're also a private exporter in Sri Lanka. And you did mention to us before on the show, as we progressed, you said that when you see the appearance of the tea, when you realize that this tea has been adulterated, you discard it and then move to buying some other teas. When you find out, as the chairman of the Exporters Association of Sri Lanka, that the tea samples that you get have been adulterated, do you report it to the tea board?
Not exactly. We don't do that. But
why is that?
No, because we have been doing it in the past. But I don't think anything happened. Not only for sugar, even for other things, the teas are coming below ISO 3720. We used to send samples to the tea board. On and off, they withdraw. They check and withdraw those samples for auctioning. But you know, it is a problem to us, because and we used to send a lot of samples to the tea board, tea exporters. We collect samples and send to them with the details of the lot number, all the details. But it was not very effective. It was you know, not stopping the problem.
So who is responsible? Is it the exporters, or is it the tea board, or is it the factory owners themselves?
No, actually, right now what's happening is the exporter take the responsibility. We have to take our own responsibility of selecting the correct tea and use them.
Do you think, Jayanta, that the tea board has to do more in Sri Lanka?
Tea board has to
do more,
Yes, definitely they can. But actually, it's you know, I personally feel the discipline should come from all sectors. The growers, the factory owners, all sectors, the brokers, they all have to take the responsibility. Only one particular, you know, association or the tea board cannot handle everything. It's a huge industry. More than 300 million kilos are produced. So I think it's practically not possible for them to monitor everything. But the discipline should come from all sectors. Now we, as exporters, we protect our business. You know, we protect our brands by taking all precautions. But they also should do that.
But you're well aware, Jayanta, that every single kilogram of tea that is being exported outside, exporters pay a levy to the Sri Lanka Tea Board. And that is to protect the rights and to ensure that the promotions are done on behalf of the exporters in Sri Lanka. Am I right?
Yes, yes.
So the tea board does have a responsibility.
Yeah, but actually there are 2-3 types of you know, cess is collected by the treasury, and a promotion and marketing levy is collected by the tea board, that is for promotion and marketing. The cess is collected by the treasury and used for various things, including running of the tea board and for replanting and various other things. And the promotion and marketing levy is collected by the tea board for promotions of Ceylon tea. But you know, this promotion and marketing levy have been collected. You know, we are asking them to stop it. The tea exporters have asked tea board to stop that. But now the tea board has agreed to at least to stop collecting 50% of it from end of this year, because we feel that it has not done anything good to us.
Thank you very much. And I'll get back to you in a minute.
Okay.
But before I move to our very vocal Roshan Rajpure, Roshan, with your permission, give me a minute to quickly question Dr. Petyagoda. Dr. Petyagoda, 2 points that Jayanta did mention right now a couple of seconds ago was the fact that the levy that is being charged by the tea board, and then the promise that has been made by the tea board to cut this by half. Isn't it the responsibility of the tea board? You said that you get 12,500 lots plus to check, but isn't it the responsibility of the tea board to check at least half of it? Because there is a levy that is being paid, there is money that has been allocated, so if there is adulteration of tea, the tea board has to be held responsible.
So I need to answer that in some detail.
Yes.
There is a levy of approximately 6 rupees and 50 cents that goes as a cess that comes to government. That amounts to almost 2 billion rupees per year. And it's that 2 billion that is used for the entire development and regulatory process of the tea industry. So about half that money, about 900 million, goes into the operating expenses of the Tea Smallholders Development Authority, the Tea Research Board and the Tea Board. 3 large institutions. The other half of that money goes into replanting subsidies. About 900 million rupees this year will go into replanting subsidies for the whole industry. So the tea board does have a duty to check the tea. But when you think of 12,500 cups of tea a week, it's a massive job to test. So the procedure that I adopted was I invited the exporters who examine the tea before they bid for it at auction. They get samples into their warehouses on a weekly basis. I said, if you suspect any tea of being substandard, report that. And then
Jad just mentioned that he has done that before and it has been of no avail.
No, I think you misunderstood him. So there's 2 issues here. One is the tea being substandard because, for example, it's high in fiber. And the other is, I think the question you asked him was regarding adulteration. Now, if he suspects adulteration and he reports that to the tea board, how do you test whether that tea has been adulterated or not? It's very difficult to test. Of course, if it is some adulterant that's very easy, like potassium permanganate or something, you can just dissolve it in water and find out whether it's there. But if sugar has been used as an adulterant, once the tea is made, once it's fired, it's very difficult to detect.
So I was trying to say, Dr. Vijaywada, being a scientist and inventor yourself, with so much of technology and development and tests that are coming out in the world in this day and age, it's difficult to find whether the tea has been adulterated?
It's expensive. That's the problem. Even these pesticide residue tests, each test costs upwards of $100. It's about 17,000 rupees per test. And if the test is going to cost more than the tea, there's no point doing it. I mean, you can't have a viable industry like that. So there is a limit to how much you can test. That's why when you do catch a factory doing something wrong, you have to put them out of business. It's a very important thing that everyone knows what the rules are. And remember, we have too many factories. The amount of tea that Sri Lanka is producing in terms of green leaf is not going up. It's coming down. The number of factories has been steadily increasing. In my watch, thankfully, there were no new factories given permits. But in my opinion, the 700 factories we have is far too many. And so there is a good opportunity when you have factories doing the wrong thing, put them out of business.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rohan Vijaywada, former chairman of the Sri Lanka Tea Board. I now move my attention to Roshan Vijaywada, former chairman of the Planters Association of Ceylon. Roshan, during the break we spoke about the issue of adulteration. You said that your task was difficult during an instance in which there was sabotage at the factory. So when you take into account these 53 factories that have been nabbed for adulterating tea, do you think that there was sabotage right throughout the 53 factories? That's a bit difficult to fathom, isn't it?
What I mentioned was we had an incident soon after our wage strike where one factory was detected and it was clearly proven that it was an act of sabotage because about 2 packets of sugar was found in a waste paper basket and the tea board was informed that it was there and they detected it. As a consequence, because the rules at that time, that factory had to be suspended. And quite unwillingly though, we had to toe the line and we did it. So that is one incident I am talking of.
So I'm talking about the 53 factories. Do you think that there was sabotage right throughout the 53 factories?
I don't think.
It's hard to believe, isn't it?
No, I also agree with you. I don't think it is sabotage all round. But what I am talking was, I represent the RPCs. In our factories, our situation is quite different to that of the private tea factory owners. Because as you are aware, our workforce is highly unionized. And on top of that, we are signatories to so many certification processes where it ensures human dignity, and we just cannot keep on checking people or patting them and doing body checks. Anyone can bring in a little bit of sugar into the factory and sabotage. That is the point that I tried to make. So we have taken every precaution to prevent any adulterations in the factories that we manage.
So let me pose a question that was posed to you by Nadim just a few seconds ago. Do you think that it is right to cancel the licenses of these factory owners on the basis if they are found guilty, if an investigation does find them guilty in the next few weeks at least?
I think once, if you establish that it is a deliberate act of adultering to gain unfair competitive advantage, I think I support the view that there should be some punishment as a deterrent to others. But we have to establish their guilt. I was talking of an exception where there was a deliberate act of sabotage and we showed enough evidence to that fact. I'm not talking of that, I'm talking of...
Thank you very much, Roshan Vijaywada, former chairman of the Planters Association of Ceylon. Today, very careful, Roshan, when you're expressing your views. I'm trying to figure out, because you're an individual who's quite very vocal.
Yes,
and
no, in this case, I have also been involved in the industry for 35 years, and we have a sacred duty to protect it for the next generation. But I support what Rohan says. He says, find out whether they are guilty, and yes, take action. There's no other alternative.
Thank you very much, Roshan Rajure, former chairman of the Planters Association of Ceylon. We have to thank Roshan for the contributions he have made for Face the Nation over the last few months. He was one of the individuals who came on the show and very strongly said that the government's ban on weedicides is very illogical thinking. This was just after the ban was imposed in the year 2015. He was one of the individuals who was very vocal on this subject, and thank you very much, Roshan, for expressing your honest opinion, and we can see the results at least now. We'll talk about the weedicide issue in a moment, but I need to remind our viewers, based on the information that I'm getting on the grapevine, is the fact that two strong UNP ministers are also involved in these factories. I don't want to mention the names right now, but just to bring to light that there is also some sort of political influence in the adultering of tea, and there are several individuals within the government ranks who also own a few factories. So let me open the floor for questioning from our journalists. Let's start off with Nadim.
Thanks, Shamir. Mr. Fernando, I'll come to you. The adulteration of tea is a tip of the iceberg of challenges currently facing the Sri Lankan tea industry. The reason I say this is because we've seen the fallout that has come from the unilateral withdrawal of the United States from the Iran nuclear deal and the reimposition of US sanctions. Now, European Union authorities have already taken steps to protect their business interests. There are others also who have gotten into business with Iran after the nuclear deal came into effect, who are finding ways to circumvent the US sanctions. Now for Sri Lanka, this is going to be very difficult. That new market that was opened up is now being closed off again. What do you think needs to happen to sort of offset this? Is there a way that we can continue to sell Ceylon tea in Iran?
You know, the question of Iran nuclear deal that was on the table from the day President Trump was elected. That was one of his election campaign promises. So we were aware that this was to happen sometime subsequently to his taking office as the president. Now, I believe we always, as usual, wait till the debacle happens to go and take action. Now look at Iran and India, and Iran and Sri Lanka. Iran and India have a very good relationship across on the exchange of trade. They have a rupee to real facility for the exports. In fact, the Indian exports to Iran has increased in the recent past. Whereas Sri Lanka does not have such a facility, but we have the credit balance in their favor of something like 240 million on crude oil that we have bought, and there's a credit balance. It may not be possible, but still I believe there is a possibility, a remote possibility to negotiate, at least to set off some of these through export of tea. Now we must understand tea is not a banned item for export, because it comes under food, and medicine are not banned under any sanctions for exports. What is banned is transaction of dollars via New York exchange to come into any country. That is where the controls take place. Now even euro transfers are monitored, whether they are coming from Iran or whether they are coming from banned, the sanctioned banks. When we met the US delegation about several years ago, just before the Trump administration took control, they were very positive that the tea industry can look, positive on the future with Iran, using this non-sanctioned tea for trading. And they assured us that tea is not sanctioned, but you have to find a bank that is not sanctioned to do the transaction. But that kind of thing doesn't
Do you think it's a possibility for Sri Lanka to work out a rupee to real transaction?
I'm not sure whether it will be possible to work out rupee to real, but I still believe that $240 million that we hold in credit balance for Iran will be the key factor that we can use, and that we can explain that as a repayment and use tea as the bartered good for that. And I don't think there will be any sanction imposed on that. But I don't know how good our negotiations would be. I think that is where the secret lies. Other than that,
Mr. Karnaratna, you're also an exporter. How do you feel about this, the US withdrawal and the...
Now, during the last few years, we are having a problem of receiving money from Iran. So exports can go to Iran, but money don't come to us direct because it's US, via to US. So people send money from different places, from different countries, and also the euro is sent from different places. Actually, Tea Exporter Association took it up with the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, and even Dr. Petyagodas was involved in that. And we requested Central Bank to come out with a proposal. So they had a kind of a negotiation with the German Central Bank to use a euro for tea. But I think our commercial banks have not agreed to work with Iranian banks, even though those are euros. So actually, it's the government of Sri Lanka, the central bank is willing to help us, or willing to do exports and to get our money by using euro, but none of the commercial banks.
Why not? Are they afraid that
they are afraid of US
sanctions?
sanctions? Yeah, because they are afraid of they have large businesses with US, so they don't want to expose themselves.
Dr. Petyagoda, how do you see us resolving this sort of problem? Because it is a tragedy, really, because that was a market that is opening up.
You know, the different countries, now Korea has a way of working with Iran, India has a rupee.
Europe is coming up with new ways of working with Iran.
But I think Sri Lanka is very small. I think we have no way of whatever the... And also, I think we can find a way of doing, but what we needed is a very focused attempt to do this. If we can have a proper plan with authority from the government of Sri Lanka, I think they can come out with a proposal.
Dr. Petyagoda, Mr. Karnaratna mentioned that you were also part of that sort of meeting with the central bank to figure out a way to resolve this. Do you see this being resolved anytime in the near future?
No, to be honest, I don't. Dr. Kumarasamy at the central bank has been extremely proactive and helpful. And the central bank has been closely in touch with the German Bundesbank to try to get a channel open. The problem is that commercial banks, whether in Europe or in Sri Lanka, are frightened of the prospect of US sanctions against them. So I think on both sides there is a bit of an impasse. Countries like South Korea and India are so big that they can afford to take risks. If you think about it, even Sri Lanka, there was a time when we took such a risk in 1952 during the Rubber Rice Pact. There were US sanctions against rubber exports to China. We broke the sanctions and we got away with it. We defied the US on that occasion. It was a remarkable thing that we did then. I don't think that kind of political courage exists any longer.
Well, we don't have that sort of soft power that we had back then, right now. However, there are, you mentioned that technically, for the commercial banks too, if this is via the German central bank and if it is using euros, they would not be in violation of US sanctions. So if, for example, the state banks the state commercial banks were to offer the service, and if the business were to go there, the private commercial banks would automatically fall in line, would they not?
It's more complicated than that. Actually, it's quite a complex issue. It's not just the banks that have to be regularized, it's also the people with whom we are doing the trade in Iran. Because there are individuals in Iran sanctioned. And if any of those individuals might be shareholders of the company with which we are trading, again the bank could get into trouble. It's a very complex issue, and I think, to be fair by the central bank, they've tried really hard to resolve this problem and failed.
So, Dr. Petyagoda, we have a question for you. It's quite a hypothetical question, but we have viewer posing this question to Dr. Petyagoda. Says, can Dr. Rohan Vijaywada conclude the fate of the 53 factories and establish his intervention for the future of the industry if he is given the authority?
I'm no longer the tea board chairman, so I'm speaking entirely as a private citizen here.
So if you are given the authority, the question is, if you are given the authority, can you intervene and ensure the future of the tea industry in the country?
I think the present tea board chairman is quite capable of doing that on his own. He's a fine man.
So you say that there is no political courage now. Now I'm trying to figure out.
Sorry, I was talking about political courage at a national level.
Yes, absolutely. Getting back to that, Dr. Vijaywada. You say that there is no political courage now. So what do you really mean by that? When you say there is no political courage, you say that Navin Dissanayake is your nephew as well, and you speak about political courage. Now I'm trying to figure out, does the tea industry in Sri Lanka have a future if we don't have the courage or the political courage or the political will, at least now, to take the right decision?
I'm hoping that everyone concerned will take the right decision. I also hope the minister will stay out of this, because you see the act, the Tea Control Act is very clear. This decision is something that has to be taken by the tea commissioner, not by the chairman of the tea board or the minister. It's the tea commissioner's call. The right of appeal then exists if a factory is aggrieved by the tea commissioner's decision to appeal to the minister. That is the procedure that was followed while I was tea board chairman. The tea commissioner takes a decision, the chairman obviously endorses that, and if the factory finds itself aggrieved, then it can appeal to the minister, and the minister has the last word as far as the law is concerned. I'm hoping that that will be the procedure that will be followed here as well.
Mr. Fernando, how does, now for example, if say Germany or Europe, how do they test teas coming from Sri Lanka? What is the procedure?
I think there are certain tests that you can perform.
Is it a random thing that they do, or?
They do random tests, not on all, so far. Okay. So I think so far we have been fortunate that none of the shipments have got rejected. I personally believe we need more testing facilities in Sri Lanka, because when you look at it, this was a gentleman's trade. Most of our rules or regulations are by convention, and unfortunately this has gone out of the gentleman way of doing things. So what we need now is more quality control systems to be implemented. So I feel we need to invest in testing laboratories, not in Colombo but at regional level, where we can test for sugar, we can test for MRLs and all sorts of other residual materials like insect infestation. I think that is the need of the hour if we are to move forward with Ceylon tea being ecologically pure tea.
Dr. Vijaywada, how many accredited laboratories do we have for this kind of tests?
So the word accredited is a loaded word. It's charged because it depends who has demanded that kind of accreditation. The Japanese Ministry of Health, for example, requires a laboratory that's accredited under the Good Laboratory Practices scheme of the OECD. There's no laboratory in Sri Lanka that has that accreditation. That's not to say that it's a very high or special accreditation. It just happens to be the one they want. So I don't think accreditation is the issue. There's at least 5 labs that are quite capable of doing what we need. The issue is not so much testing. The issue is good practice. If the factories just abide by the good practices that have been stipulated by tradition and by the regulations of the tea board, we won't have a problem. This is a recent problem. So the pesticide problem, as Mr. Rajadure pointed out, the pesticide problem is largely an error on the part of the government. So let's leave that to one side. A sugar problem is largely one that can be controlled, as I've just explained. So I think these are fairly simple things. You don't need to bring rocket science into this. It's a very straightforward technology that's needed to control this. And
Mr. Rajadure,
can I go ahead?
go ahead.
Yeah. Mr. Fernando, you mentioned earlier that some of your importers from Germany are demanding for answers as to whether these 50-odd factories have been held accountable. So in the event that there is no proper investigation or no deterrent, could they be testing all RTs?
Before coming to that question, yeah. I want to tell, I think this was wrongly handled. I believe the minister went public too soon without taking punitive action. If he went public, he should have been in a position to say, these were found guilty, this is the situation, and these are the factories. Now he has created the situation where 53 supposed to be factories have adulterated, but up to now no action has been taken. So this is where the confusion is. I feel this was hyped at a time when it should not have been, and this has gone viral. Now what is happening in Germany is they are conscious about what can happen. Now as Dr. Vijaywada said, once the tea is caramelized, it's very difficult to detect. What happens after that is, it has a possibility of absorption of moisture and thereby mold growth. So that can happen after some time, or very, very fine laboratories can still find the caramel residues or whatever, I don't know, I'm not sure of that. So right now we are on the edge of worrying whether something can be detected in Germany or other places as a result. So we sincerely hope with our testing, local testing, tasting, that we can avoid this problem.
Mr. Karnataka, just 1 minute, Mr. Karnataka, now when you export your Ceylon tea, do you do independent tests? And is it done overseas, or how do you set about it?
Yeah, now currently the exporters to Japan, before they purchase tea at the auction, they send samples to India for testing. So once the tests are passed, and when it's confirmed those are within those limits, only they purchase the teas. So for Japan, they practice that before buying the tea, and for bulk shipments, they test the blend sample before shipping. Even to Europe, that was it was not so strict in the past. We used to get certain laboratory test before shipment, but now, especially for Japan, they do the test before purchasing tea.
Can fungus develop as a result of adulterating tea?
Yes.
It could?
Yes.
Has it happened before?
We on and off get complaints from our buyers.
About fungus being developed in tea?
Yes.
So Dr. Patel, that's a serious issue.
Yeah, I agree.
So what must the factory owners do? How can the tea board push the factory owners to the wall and demand for answers? So when you say fungus being detected in tea, that's a huge problem. I don't know any exporter. Has any exporter brought this issue up to you?
Yes. Yeah, we have had complaints. Not major complaints. There have no rejections as such, but there were customer complaints, and we have discussed this at the CTTA level and also the tea exporters forums. But though there were no rejections, so the exporter has settled it by himself. So, but only thing is, if it's happened at the point of customs or quarantine, then there will be a major problem. But now the complaints are coming from the consumer or from the distributor or supermarket or something. So it's a major problem. It could lead to, if they detect at the time of import, we will have a serious issue.
Mr. Rajadure, yes. I want to bring to you another sort of long-standing issue that faces the plantations industry as a whole and the tea industry specifically, which is the issue of labor and wages. Now last week the Minister Navin Disanayake said that the plantation companies, the plantation owners, have to be prepared for wage negotiations.
Yes.
Now we know that several plantation companies have been pushing for a productivity-based wage scale. This has not been supported by many of the unions, but what is the current sort of situation when it comes to negotiations with the unions? Are we going to be seeing the implementation of a productivity-based wage scale, or is it going to be sort of collective bargaining?
Well, at the last wage negotiations, for the first time in about 150 years, we were able to incorporate an element of productivity into the wage model. I think it was a long drawn out wage negotiations. There was a lot of issues, and for the first time it dragged on for such a long time. one of the reasons is that the industry was facing a critical situation. In fact, if you recall, at the time we were doing the negotiations, our cost of production was about 50 to 60 rupees more than the prices we were realizing. Fortunately, we are not in that situation today, but now that the productivity element has been introduced, I believe now the unions also see the benefit of that. And when you look at the numbers, we see that the workers are earning far more than they did before, because earlier it was an attendance-based system where their mere presence in the field for 8 hours sort of entitles them to full day's wage. But now we have put in a system where they have to be measured by the norm. So now they are driving for the norm. In going for the norm, naturally they don't stop by the norm, then they exceed. And we found that the earnings of the workers have increased. So
at the same time,
situation.
we see, I'll quickly ask this question because we're running out of time. At the same time, we saw that now in the first quarter of 2018, earnings from tea exports has sort of increased as a result of one of the key causes being the depreciation of the rupee, which may not necessarily be a good thing because it's not an increase in volume of export. But with this depreciation of the rupee, on the one hand, the earnings of the plantation companies have increased in terms of X number of dollars coming in. So, but at the same time, the cost of living for those working in the plantation sector has also increased because of the devaluation of currency. So, can we expect to, through following these negotiations, will there be a fair deal? Is what I'm saying. That reflects both these factors.
I think if you look back on the history of wage negotiations, we have always given fairly substantive wage increases. Always, except in one rare occasion, our wage increase has been more than the Colombo Consumer Index. And we have gone back, if you go back, we have given as much as 40%, 43% wage increases. And I think over the last few wage negotiations, we have moderated. We have given 20% plus. Any industry, whether it's tea or any other industry, we can only pay our employees out of the earnings. So this time around also, we will not agree to something that we cannot go and honor, because you can see the issues that we have in Sri Lanka. Various people go and promise so many things that they cannot deliver, and we have wildcat strikes all over. So I think the plantation industry has been very sure of what they can afford to give, and we are committed to it, and we have honored it without any breach up to now. I mean, we have never delayed even a single day's wage in paying the workers. So going forward, we have proposed certain wage models because I believe time has long past its due that we should have changed the wage model from the archaic system of daily based attendance system, and now we are proposing a revenue sharing model, which I believe the unions should see the benefit, long-term benefit, because we see people leaving the industry because of so many other issues. And it is my fervent hope that all the parties involved will come to some sort of a understanding and move forward in this industry.
So I'll give Charita one question before we wrap up tonight's show. One question.
Mr. Ajudar, now all these issues regarding residue and adulterated tea, how will this impact prices in the Colombo auction?
Well, in short, we had some crises like the residues and additions. I think we can easily rectify it, because over the 150 years we have shown ourselves to be resilient, resourceful, because 2.5 years we somehow or other managed the wheat situation without allowing the situation to implode and go out of control, and we will be resurgent. I can assure you that.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your thoughts in the first, second, third and fourth rounds. We're now going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's a final round. Stay connected. Stay with Face the Nation. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. What is brewing in the tea industry in Sri Lanka? I want to start off the final round with Rohan Vijaywada, former chairman of the Planters Association of Ceylon. Rohan, right now in Sri Lanka, there's a tug of war. When it comes to importation of tea, to liberalize the tea industry in Sri Lanka, the tea industry is divided. There's no second word about it. When it comes to an issue like this, the tea industry is united, but the factory owners are divided. When it comes to issues concerning everyone in the industry, there's one section which is always showing the red flag, saying, no, this is not right. With all these divisions in an industry that has been surviving for 150 years, you still come here and say there is so much of resilience that this industry has gone through in Sri Lanka. Do we still have a glimmer of hope for the tea industry in the country? And if so,
yes,
where are you seeing this?
Yes, I believe so, because our industry has so many stakeholders with varying interests. It's understood that each stakeholder will try to protect its interests and its sustainability in a manner that they feel is beneficial to them. But in major issues, I believe, and we have demonstrated that we can come together, talk reason, and arrive at a common goal that benefits everyone. Now, even the tea importation issue, discussions are going on, and if it benefits the grower whom I represent, I don't think there's any harm. But there needs to be a lot of discussions and open discussions about how and what form it will take. So I want to assure you that our industry has gone through challenging times in the last 150 years. No other industry in Sri Lanka with so much of history has gone through so many ups and downs. But thanks to the resilience of the people in the industry, we are still alive and kicking, and we are doing a good job. In fact, okay, barring these things, our prices are good. Our industry has revived itself at least last year, and we hope that this trend will continue. And now our major challenge is the impending wage negotiations, and which I hope that all parties will see reason and come to a suitable arrangement and let the industry continue its good work.
Thank you very much. That was Roshan Rajdure, former chairman of the Planters Association of Ceylon. I now move my attention to Rohan Fernando, former president of the Tea Exporters Association of Sri Lanka. Rohan, next 18 months, next 12 months, 12 to 18 months for the tea industry in Sri Lanka, where do you envisage we will move towards? Will we see the banning of the licenses of these 53 institutes? Will the tea prices in Sri Lanka reduce? Will at least the exporters now gain a competitive advantage, because we know the margins of many exporters have drastically shrinked as a result of the increasing tea prices in the local market in the country? How can we be competitive next 12 months? Can at least the exporters say, okay, this year is a good year for us? Because the planters said so the last year. Can the exporters come out and say, yes, okay, this is a good year for us, we can turn things around?
I think I always look at the positive side of the, even in a difficult time, there are positives that you can look at. Ceylon tea has had a very good impression in the world market. As Roshan said, these little things that I got highlighted, I believe these were, there's overreaction, and we went too far with this sugar issue. Now even today, most of the time we are discussing sugar, whereas it's supposed to be 53. We don't know whether it's exactly 53, and I believe that we have put the cart before the horse before finding out whether they are actually the wrongdoers and taken action. This is where the problem lies. But as a whole, I believe there's a lot of potential for Ceylon tea in the outside world. There are a lot of markets that we still haven't tapped into, and there are a lot of tea-based products that are still coming out. As a company, we are very hopeful 2018 is going to be a better year for us, because having gone through all the difficult times, we now understood where the niche is, what we have to avoid, and where we have to, our course has to be charted.
Rohan, very quickly before I move to the other speaker, you just said that the Ceylon tea has a very good stand internationally at present. However, you are a very staunch supporter of liberalizing the tea industry in Sri Lanka as well. So that means that the Ceylon tea component will be reduced, will be opening up the floodgates, there will be tea coming into the country. And I'm trying to figure out now where you stand here, because you once say that Ceylon tea is important, and then you say the liberalizing of the tea industry is important. I'm trying to figure out where you stand in this equation.
Now you have put words into my mouth, the floodgates. I never want floodgates open. What we are looking at is, look at how do you want this industry to grow as an export industry? Now, I must confess, and I firmly believe in my conviction that Ceylon tea industry, there are two major segments, the plantation sector and the export sector. These are two different industries. At one point in time, before the nationalization of the estate, it was one, because the same plantation companies had their Colombo officers to export. But now there are two different segments. The government did see that these have to be segregated. During the Yahapalana, there was a definite move to have the tea exports under the external trade ministry and the plantation under plantation ministry. But it didn't happen. That is why we are saying the tea industry is divided when you take tea as a tea industry. We have failed to realize there are two segments, plantation, which is a supply of raw material to the export industry. When you take the export industry, are we looking at the 320 million kilos that is manufactured in Sri Lanka, or nearly 6 billion kilos of consumption and 1.5 billion kilos of export trade? That is my question. Whilst maintaining the purity of Ceylon tea and creating that for the niche market, there's yet more the room to move in if we are allowed to
Thank you very much.
take control of that 1.5 billion.
Thank you very much, Rohan Fernando, former president of the Tea Exporters Association of Sri Lanka. I now move to Mr. Jayanta Karunaratne, chairman of the Tea Exporters Association of Sri Lanka. I must tell you, the most difficult task is lying on your shoulder as far as the four panelists are concerned. The three of them are out of office right now, but you are the only one who's sitting as the chairman of the Tea Exporters Association of Sri Lanka. So there's a lot of weight on your shoulders for sure, Jayanta. So right now, there is a problem. The exporters are concerned. What is the next step?
You know, exporters are having a serious issue. One thing, as you said, the internal issues, the sugar, the residues, all kinds of things.
Liberalizing the industry.
Yeah, that is one issue. Now, externally, we have a lot of issues. If you analyze the Sri Lanka tea exports, all our buying markets are in trouble. The Russia, Turkey, Iran, Libya, Iraq, Syria, all are having problems. Russian ruble devaluated more than 100% during last 4 years. Turkey about 40% during last 1 year. So we are under pressure from all these markets because their buying power has reduced. And you know, compared to that, Sri Lanka rupee depreciated is very small, only 3.2% during this year. So we have to supply. So you know, the profits or the margins, or you know, the whatever the, you know, either the exporter has to lose, or they can't do in any of the promotion or marketing work or research, or we cannot spend any money on these. So the exporters are having a serious issue right now. So, you know, we all look at now, you know, even this conversation, 90% of the time spent on the producer side, where you look at those adulteration. But those are very important to us. But, you know, we have much more serious issues outside. So if you don't attend to address those issues, as Rohan said, we need special attention in these areas. So if you don't have focus on this and try to resolve these issues, we will be in trouble in the near future.
So you think, you mean to say that 150 years, another 150 years is not possible, the way we are going right now?
No, you know, not that I'm saying that, but we need to solve it. We need a lot of attention and focus on solving these issues. If we neglect these things, we will have a serious issue in the near future. But I think as we all believe that we will get adjusted at some stage, you know, as we are trying to settle the issues of residue levels and the sugar, the outside issues also, some are beyond our control. But we can do many things to, you know, do this. But we are happy about the prices. But, you know, this will not remain at these levels for a longer period.
Thank you very much, Jayanta Karunaratne, chairman of the Tea Exporters Association of Sri Lanka. To be fair by our viewers, Jayanta, I need to mention, with your permission of course, that Face the Nation has brought up the issues of the exporters a couple of times. We've had Rohan Fernando, we've had Meryl J. Fernando, who represents Dilma, and several others, including Roshan, on this very forum, on this very show, expressing their views about the exporters, the challenges that the exporters of Sri Lanka are facing. We've had 4 shows so far for the last 9 months. That's quite a number. And today we thought we'll allocate some time for the adulteration of tea, mainly because of the emails that we got requesting that we discuss about this topic. I now move my attention to Dr. Rohan Patel, the former chairman of the Sri Lanka Tea Board. Dr. Patel, what would be your message to the Minister of Plantations? Leaving aside your relationship with him professionally, if you were to advise him about the future of the tea industry, being in the helm of the tea board for 2.5 years, what would that advice be?
I think you have to see, as Rohan mentioned, that we have 2 tea industries. There is a service tea industry, which is the exporters, who are the value adders, and there is a production tea industry. In the truly long term, the production tea industry is going to shrink. Unfortunately, we have to bear that in mind, because no highly developed economy can also have a mass production agriculture. It's very difficult to do. Large countries with large domestic markets can afford to do that, but Sri Lanka has a very small domestic market for its tea. Only about 5% is consumed locally. We need to realize that our per capita gross national income in Sri Lanka now is about $12,000 a year. That's a World Bank figure. Kenya, by comparison, is $3,200 per year. The Kenyan cost of living is so low that Kenya can produce tea at a fraction of the price that Sri Lanka can produce tea. So by having the exporters on the one hand captive and forced to buy Ceylon tea only, it's unfair to them, because they're trying to build up a service economy that is looking at value addition and exports. On the other hand, we have 2 million stakeholders dependent on the production industry at the moment. But that industry is going to shrink with time. We are going to end up like the South Korean or Japanese tea industry, which is high value but small volume. And that means fewer people in the tea industry. Now, if you ask Roshan, for example, how easy it is to find labor in the tea industry, he'll tell you it's very difficult, because people are walking away from the tea industry because people don't want to do manual labor any longer. The aspiration of young Sri Lankans, the Sri Lankans that we are educating at huge cost, is not to be a plantation worker. Their aspiration is to go beyond that. So I think it's going to be a challenge to run a mass production tea industry in the future. The future lies in the exporters and in value addition, and managing that tension is the biggest challenge that a plantations industries minister will have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rohan Patel, the former chairman of the Sri Lanka Tea Board. I need to thank Roshan Rajadare, former chairman of Planters Association of Ceylon, for joining us tonight on the show. Jayanta Karunaratne, chairman of the Tea Exporters Association of Sri Lanka. Dr. Rohan Patel, former chairman of the Sri Lanka Tea Board. Dr. Patel is a man with a lot of integrity, and working with you for the last 2.5 years, being an exporter myself, I have had the immense pleasure, Dr. Patel, and a salute to you for the job well done for the last 2.5 years. And thank you very much, Rohan Fernando, former president of the Tea Exporters Association of Sri Lanka, the very vocal individual indeed in the tea industry in the country. You speak about the word gentleman. To be very honest, Rohan, it's like the bane in this country. You see the political hierarchy in Sri Lanka, we speak about gentleman's politics, it doesn't happen. You speak about the gentleman's trade, that is being riddled with corruption. You speak about the gentleman's game in Sri Lanka, that too, unfortunately, is riddled with corruption. Thank you very much, Nadine. Thank you very much, Charita, for joining us this evening on the show. It's always a pleasure to listen to the two of you as well on Face the Nation. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. Deception may give us what we want for the present, but it will always take it away in the end. Take care and goodbye.